Okay, so we are at the 4 o'clock hour. If anybody else joins, I will be letting them in. Anyway, I'm Dr. Craig Ingstrom. I am a faculty member in the Department of Communication Studies at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, and I am the advisor for the Communication Career Council, who has organized this event today. It is being recorded, so folks that want to watch this can do so after the fact. We will be just retaining this privately and internally for our department. Today we have Jeremy Sneed, who is a graduate of Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, from the College of Mass Communication. His degree is, I believe, radio television. After he graduated, he was a radio personality for CIL-FM, and then since then he's had a sort of rapid rise in his career from a intern in the public relations field within baseball, but now will be taking a PR director position with the San Antonio Missions. Welcome, Jeremy. Thank you for giving us some of your time today so that you can answer questions from our students and audience. How have you been?
It's been crazy, and today especially, I'm actually moving. Today I moved into my apartment in San Antonio, so I'm actually just sitting on the floor. I have no furniture at the moment, but yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to take the time, and yeah, I mean, I've been getting through it, trying to catch my breath as much as possible. The last 2 weeks have been, got the call that they wanted to offer me the job. Then it was come down here apartment hunting, and then it was get the apartment, and then it was getting down here, and just so much craziness in the last 2 weeks. But I think it kind of makes it fun.
So what was the timeline for getting this position? So when did you apply for it, and when did they offer you the position?
So the timeline of this kind of dates back a little while, because by the time I graduated from SIU, I was working full time at CIL-FM, graduated in May of 18, and then due to some budgetary reasons, I don't know if that's even a word, budget reasons, they had to cancel my full time employment so they could run a syndicated program, which was cheaper for them at the time. So with that happening, I wanted to pursue my real dream of working in sports, specifically working in baseball. And at the time, I didn't even know who this team was, but they had a position for public relations. It was out of my comfort zone, but it seemed like something I could do. It was journalism background, kind of communications. And I had kind of learned a little bit of it from people at SIU, just bending their ears. And so applied for it, and my boss was gracious enough to give me the opportunity. He was actually in the same boat that I was in. He wanted to be a broadcaster. Someone gave him a chance in PR. He ended up loving it, didn't even care about broadcasting anymore. So I think he kind of saw that in me, the same person that he was. So that was spring of 2019, moved out to San Antonio, did the public relations internship. They're a small team. They were a small team then. They're still a small team now. So there was no room in the budget to keep me for anything. So I kept in contact with them throughout the last year and a half. Had to move back home, worked a random part-time job, and then kept plugging away at trying to get the next sports job. And the best opportunity I had was interning for the Tampa Bay Rays. I figured this was a minor league baseball team. The next step would be interning for a professional or a major league baseball team, and then the sky would be the limit. So January of last year, I pack up, move down to St. Petersburg, Florida, and ready to get the ball rolling. And 2 months later, COVID-19 hits. So everything wipes out. Including the missions. They had to wipe out staff. The Rays had to let all of us interns go. I had a 12-month lease, so I was pretty much stuck in St. Petersburg, trying to figure out if sports was even something I wanted to pursue, because the market was just going to be flooded with people who got laid off, people with tons more experience than me. But I figured, keeping with my connections, I needed to see what the missions were up to. And it turned out that my boss, who I interned for with the missions, ended up getting laid off, and he switched career paths completely. He went into he became a police officer or something like that, a cop in Atlanta. So I knew there was a position available, whether or not they would want me back. And so I reached out to them as early as October, just letting them know that, hey, I'm not in a contract or anything. I'm working part-time jobs. I would love to come back if you guys would have me. I don't know what the timeline is, but I'm open if you guys are open. And the initial guy that I emailed never responded to me. So I tried texting him. He didn't answer. So I emailed the second in command gentleman, Dave Gassaway, and emailed him instead. And he responded immediately and said, we don't know what's going on, but thank you for letting us know that you're interested, and we'll let you know what happens throughout everything. So because of COVID-19, minor league baseball got completely shifted. Teams lost affiliations, teams got dissolved, they took on different teams from different leagues, became minor league teams. Everything got shifted. The budgets got shifted. Everything was all brand new. So taking that into effect, I had no idea when they would even know what's going on. And at the same time, my apartment lease is about to run out. This is January of this year. My apartment lease is about to run out. I don't have any jobs. Like, I'm not making any money, and I need to do something. So I'm still reaching out to them like, hey, what's going on? I still want to come back. Let me know what's going on. And they couldn't tell me anything. So the last I had heard from them was in January. And so I moved out of my apartment, found a place to crash for a couple weeks, got a job in a warehouse. My parents were moving down to Tampa, moved in with them. And 2 weeks ago, Friday, March 11th, out of the blue, they say, hey, let us know when we can talk. I said, I have a lunch break. Give me a call. And they said, we want to offer you the position that you've been begging us for. And can you start in 2 weeks? I'm like, I guess, yeah, I got nothing else going on. So the 2 week frenzy began, and but I kind of like it. I think I kind of like doing things on a whim a little bit. I think if I would have known in October that, hey, you have until April 1st to start, I think that kind of would have taken away from the craziness and the fun aspect of this. Kind of having that 2 week span, I think has made it a little bit more fun, and it helps that the transition has actually been really painless and smooth and not stressful too. So that's been the timeline. Is I've been trying to get this job for a while, and eventually it worked out.
So it sounds to me that this is like a classic example of some risk taking, right? Some luck, some timing, some persistence, and some networking, and a combination of all of those things led you to sort of where you're at right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, risk taking in the fact that I've been willing to move halfway across the country 3 different times now, going from Southern Illinois to San Antonio, back to Chicago, to St. Petersburg, back to San Antonio. So definitely risk taking on that part, risk taking on jumping out of my comfort zone. I studied radio television in college, never did anything PR related other than talking to people and maybe taking a class or two on it and just kind of picking things up on my own. So the risk taken involved of trying to switch careers at, I'd say, still a relatively young age, but being able to try to jump ship and do something different.
Yeah, and taking internships, of course, like while you were to graduate, because I think there's like a stigma to that, right? Yeah, so that was great. Well, anyway, this is a very informal affair. I just wanted to get a sort of baseline of what you've been up to, and then let folks ask questions. And of course, if there's too much silence, I have some questions that I can pull up. But yeah, so let's. Does anybody have any questions from the audience? Feel free to use the chat if you'd like, but also, feel free to just unmute. There's a small enough audience here that even if we talk over each other just a little bit, I don't think it'll be too crazy.
Yeah, so first, thank you for coming to speak to us. And also, I do have a question about just kind of like a daily life in PR. I know things can be different every single day. but I was wondering what are some kind of like daily or like given tasks that you do in PR?
I think I was having a little trouble hearing it, but it sounded like she was wondering what the daily job tasks were for what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, like kind of like
Right.
what does it look like in a day of the life of a PR person?
Right. So public relations in the sports world is much different than what traditional public relations is for your regular office job. And I always say the normal world, because working in sports is completely different than your normal job. But I learned very quick. Oh, sorry. I learned very quick how different sports public relations or media relations can be. So when I interned, and things are going to be a little bit different this year due to COVID guidelines and some COVID restrictions, there's probably going to be some things that we're not going to be allowed to do that we did before. But when I interned, so in a normal season, we can call it that, in a normal season, what we would be in charge of would be creating the media guide. Every team in professional sports, they come up with a media guide, which is almost like a yearbook that you come out with before the year starts. So you have your your team owners, like normally the front of it will have the first few pages will have your team owners, your front office executives, the big shots. And then you'll get into who the coaches are and what they've done in their careers. And then you'll have a list of players. In baseball, you'll have a list of players who may play for the team. So you'll have a group of about 30 or 40 players that are likely to play for the team at some point or spend most of the year there. So you go through their careers, put down all their stats, stuff like that, and that's your media guide. And so that's the big first project that you do, because that's going to get sent to TV stations, newspapers, MLB. It's going to get sent to all sorts of places. So you need to make sure that that thing is perfectly accurate and it's been triple checked, quadruple checked, that there's no mistakes. And that's the first big project. Then you have media day, which is where you're going to have the players show up, get their headshots taken, get their animations. Like if you've been to a sporting event, you see they'll announce the player and then you see him like randomly swinging a bat on the jumbotron. That's all done in one day. On media day, that's something that we orchestrate and have them do. Some players enjoy it more than others. I learned that with the Rays last summer, is that some players enjoy media day more than others. Some just put their head down, do what they need to do, get out of there. Others like to have a little fun. So that's always interesting to see which players are more of the characters than the others. So you have media day. And then when the season starts, a lot of what we do is dealing face to face with the players, with the coaches, and with the media. So if a journalist wants to write an article about one of our players, they'll reach out to us. Or in this season, they'd reach out to me, because I'm not going to have an intern with the staff being as small as it is. So if there's a journalist that wants to do a story on one of our players, they would email me or call me, say, hey, we want to talk to this guy. We're doing this article and we think he'd be perfect to talk to. So then it's up to me to go to the player or go to the manager and say, hey, so-and-so wants to talk to him. They're doing an article. Do you want to do that? And it's completely up to the player to say, yeah, sure, I can do it. I can do it tomorrow at this time. Or the player could politely say, hey, I really don't like talking to the media. I'd really rather not. And then that kind of becomes a back and forth of, do I push him? Like, how you have to kind of handle that a little bit, the players' personalities, because you don't want to push someone if they don't want to do something. At the same time, if it's a really big name player, you kind of have to be like, well, you're the biggest name on the team. We kind of need you to talk to people. So that's a balancing act that you have to figure out, is who, and that kind of goes back to media days. You figure out who the nicer players are, who the more outspoken players are, and you can tend to count on them to, hey, this guy wants to do an article, you want to help him out. And so you know the players that you're going to rely on. And then we also keep track of social media, posting funny hashtags or keeping up with daily trends. Like when there was the old face challenge, a couple of years ago, we did that on Instagram, posted some of the players with the old man filters on, and you're trying to keep up to date a little bit, even though being a minor league team that you're not going to get 100,000 likes or a retweet on something, but you still have a core group of people on social media that you need to reach out to and try to branch out as much as possible. So keeping up with social media is incredibly important for us. And then also we release, we do the press releases. So those again have to be really accurate. They might come from the higher ups from the front office saying, hey, we have a promotion coming out. We want you to do a press release at this time. And so a lot of accuracy goes into that, making sure that it gets out directly when they want it, whether that's noon, whether that's 4 o'clock, whether it's Friday, Monday, whatever day it is. If they tell you a specific time, you got to make sure that it gets out on all platforms at that time. So a lot of multitasking in that. And then also when the season's going on, it's day to day of coming up with game notes. So that's something that we'll send out to the other teams in the league. We'll send that out to all the media personalities. We'll send that out to the opposing teams' broadcasters. We give it to our broadcasters. We give it to our front office. We give it to whoever might want it. And a lot of creativity goes into that because you're coming up with different stuff every day. If a guy has a funny story that happened on this day, we might put that in. If someone has history with this team, we might put that in. If someone has a 5-game hitting streak, we might put that in as a little blurb. So that's where the journalism aspect of media relations comes into it, is knowing how to find a nugget about a player or find something cool that people might want to know about, and making sure to update it all the time. We have our schedule on there to make sure that the fans know and make sure the broadcasters know that, hey, this is what's been going on in the season. And those game notes are also important just to make sure that the broadcasters have exactly what they need. And that's another thing we do is we also deal with the broadcasters to make sure that if there's a specific stat they want us to print for them, some broadcasters are more particular than others. So we have already stats that we give them, but if they're like, hey, it'd really be cool if we had this stat so we can throw it into the broadcast. Sure, no problem. Let me go print that off. And then when the game's over, we're in charge of the post-game recaps. So if you go online and search a team and you see the rundown of Missions win 5-0, and there's a little recap about it, that's something that we type up. So we're paying attention throughout the game to make sure that we know every single detail that might be important. This guy hit 2 home runs. This is the first time he's done that in 3 years. Throwing little factoids in there as well. And that's also where the journalism aspect comes into it too, is knowing how to write a nice press release or post-game recap. It's a little bit different than just doing your traditional news article, because you're trying to make it as broad as possible while also making sure that you're giving out enough information.
Yeah, that sounds like you're very busy. I'm wondering how you keep all this organized, right? All this information, and is it like a searchable database or something? Like if you have to come up with like a factoid really quickly, it's like sort of there, or like how do you do that?
There's a lot of resources. Some of them you have to pay for. Some of them come with the territory of working in baseball. So you kind of already have access to it. So there's websites like Fangraphs, or there's like an MLB archive website. There's baseballreference.com. There's different websites that you can go that are better than others for specific stuff. And it is a lot, but you tend to get into a routine a lot, because you figure out what exactly you have to do every day. So it was like during the season, I knew as the intern coming in, first thing I'd do is work on game notes, because that takes a while. You have to edit everything and take people's names out, put new people in, update all the stats, because our game notes would be a few pages long, because they would have archived information in there. Like they'd have the records in there and who's had the most hits in a game this year. And there's a whole list of records and stats and everything. So that would always take a while, because you obviously want to make sure it's accurate. And so that would be the first thing I would do. And then And then the starting lineups would get announced. So then I would post that on social media. Hey fans, here's the starting lineup today. And then before the game, it would be making sure that the fans knew who the starting pitchers were, or what time the game starts, or if there's a promotion going on. And so you get in a nice habit. And for me, I'm very routine oriented, where it makes multitasking really easy when you know that there's multiple things that you're going to have to do throughout the day. And then it's nice when there is slow time, then that's kind of where you pick and pull. Okay, maybe I can work on this now, or because it's not that important, but now that I've gotten everything else done and team's not playing today, all right, we can do that. And a lot of those tasks are like going through photos that the photographers take throughout the season. That's stuff that we would work on when there was some slow time, because it's important, but it's not like it has to get done immediately. So there's always stuff that can be done. But as far as it being really busy and how to manage it, I've always been really good at time management and multitasking, and like having a full-time job at a radio station while trying to graduate college. That was not easy, but I found a way to do it, I guess. And so it's just nice that you get in those routines and you know exactly what's going on.
Great. I do have two hands up. I don't know who had their hand up first, so I'll just go with like who's at the top of my list. So Randy, you're at the top of the list there.
Okay, I have a question about what happens when some of the media that you put out there goes negative. I used to work for the Rent One Ball Stadium in Marion for the Miners baseball. And I recall, and this was when they first opened, this has been like 10 plus years ago. I remember that there was one occasion when something on the Jumbotron appeared and people complained. And I believe it was a song that was used. It showed the players dancing to a song called Sexy Back by Justin Timberlake. And people had a problem with, I guess, the word and showing, I don't know, I guess it's just the area that we're in. People are like super conservative, but that was a problem. And I think they actually removed that. And I was just wondering, like, what do you take seriously? How much of like how many people, like the complaints that you get? I'm trying to figure out how to word this.
Yeah, like how to handle criticism.
Yeah, how to handle that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we, not us, we lucked out. The year that I interned, we didn't really have anything too crazy happen. I mean, you have the occasional fan who's a tough critic, and they're the ones always saying that something sucks. And so you always have those certain people where you just kind of shrug it off because you know that they just complain to complain. But there was a team in our league the summer that I interned that had a big PR fiasco where the wrong version of it was Memorial Day weekend, and I think they were trying to play some sort of, it was either a national anthem or some sort of like American song, and they pulled it from YouTube, and then it ended up being the wrong video, and the video that they showed was very very like too political, and they showed a lot of what you're not really supposed to show at a baseball game. And it was the busiest time of the year for baseball, Memorial Day weekend, so it was definitely packed, and they had a lot of explaining to do, and a lot of, at least what I would think, I tried to be as careful as possible when it came to posting something on social media or trying to do a trend, keep up with a trend, or when it came to typing a post-game recap. And that's what's nice with post-game recaps and things like that, is as the PR guy, you're not really supposed to have an opinion. And that was something I had to learn with doing PR, because in my initial background of radio and journalism, broadcasting and journalism, you were taught that you were going to voice your opinion. If you were going to write an article, it was going to be your opinion. If you were going to broadcast something, it's your voice, your opinion. So one of the hardest things to learn initially was, when it comes to a press release and when it comes to a post-game recap, or when it comes to posting something on social media, that it's not your voice, it's the team's voice. And so you're not going to bash a player in the post-game recap because he struck out 3 times. You're not going to put a stat either. Like maybe even if he has been struggling, let's say he's gone 0 for 30 and he really is stinking it up, you're going to try not to put that in your post-game recap, because then it looks like you're bashing your own player. And then that's where you would kind of leave it wide open to a fan being like, hey, you're going to bash your own player, and then you'd have to apologize for that. So it was kind of something, if you can get ahead of it by trying to play it safe as much as possible, that was kind of my strategy in post-game recaps and posting stuff on social media or commenting on stuff on social media, was just trying to know that people are sensitive. So if you can just try to not offend as many people as possible from the very beginning, then you're not going to have as much apologizing to do later.
Nice, play it safe for sure. I think Monica, you had your hand up earlier. Did you, and you lowered it. Are you still wanting to ask a question?
No, I got answered. Thank you.
Okay. Nil.
Okay, my question is, what would you say are the top 3 communication skills one needs to do the job that you do?
Yeah, I think definitely time management is incredibly important, because you are going to have deadlines every day. There's a certain time that we have to have the game notes done. There's a certain time that you have to have something submitted to. We submit stuff to servers and websites, and you send stuff to the other teams and everything like that. So it's not like you can just do that at game time, because other people need that. So there's making sure that you can get everything done at a feasible amount of time, because you also don't want to be working as hard as possible and then have everything done half hour before game time. We always tried to have everything done. My intern year, we tried to have everything done with about an hour and a half gap. So that way you can kind of decompress a little bit, because we're still going to be working during the game and after the game. So it's not like we can get everything done and then, we're done for the rest of the night. There's still going to be plenty of stuff to do. But if you can give yourself some breathing room, that is definitely important. I'd say risk taking, like we mentioned earlier, would definitely be important, because unless it seems like from a lot of the people that I've met in this industry that do public relations, a lot of them were in the same boat as me, where they had other ambitions, and public relations ended up falling in their lap, whether they really sought it out or they got lucky like I did. But you got to be able to take risks. Similarly with the stuff that you're going to put out there. If you do post something on Instagram trying to support the team, you are taking a risk, because you're hoping that you're reaching more people than you have with your previous posts. And so that's where taking a risk comes into play there. If you want to try something funny, or if you want to do something more serious, whatever the case may be. And then I'd say just the accuracy as well. I mean, that'd be the third thing, because everyone's human. You are going to have typos from time to time, but you want to try to limit as many typos as possible, because in the position that I'm in, the position of any director of media relations or public relations, whatever the title is, if there's typos, you're going to be the person that they come directly to. And if it becomes a pattern, then it looks like you don't know what you're talking about. You kind of lose your credibility there of, hey, this guy had especially too with facts. If you're going to put a fact in a press release or in a post-game recap, triple check that it's accurate and that it is the correct stat, because as smart as you may be, there's always going to be a bigger fan, bigger stat head that will quickly call you out if it's the wrong stat that you're posting. So accuracy is incredibly important. And even if you think it's right, look it over again, have someone else look it over for you, whatever the case may be, but you want to try to limit as many mistakes on your hands as possible.
Thank you. I remember actually, it's been a while since I've taught PR writing, but I used to always share this story in my PR writing class when I was in school, in college. We used to have a professor a news writing and news editing professor who used to give us an automatic F on any assignment that even had one typo on it. We get it. That was the way we learned that you just cannot afford to have even one mistake, and it stuck with us, it really did. So I hear you. Thank you.
I can imagine the players would be like even more upset if you got a stat wrong, unless it was in their favor, of course.
Yeah, trust me, the players will also know, because the players get upset about everything. We would have players that would get upset if the PA announcers said their name wrong, or if they played the wrong song, if they played the wrong walk-up song. Players will get upset about everything. And then that's just another thing for you to hopefully not deal with as a player after the game, saying, "Oh, how come you left that stat out of the post-game recap? I've been doing great lately and you haven't mentioned it." So that's another thing too, is you gotta figure out how to not upset the players, because they will find a reason to get upset over everything.
Yeah. Well, not only that, it's like, I mean, for some of them, it could be career breaking, right? I mean, if they're doing well and you elevate that, then maybe some, those up the stream in the MLB might look at them a little bit closer. I mean, is that accurate, or am I off base there?
Oh, absolutely. There was an instance we had when I was interning that because one of our responsibilities is to, at the end of the game, before we officially submit the box score for the game, the official stats of the game, we have to run that down to the clubhouse to make sure that it's okay with the managers. Hey, this is what our official score has for the game, because every game has an official scorer who watches the game, and they trust him or her to officially score the game. But they're human, and it's all some of it in baseball is opinion based. Was that an error? Or was it a hit? Did he, stuff like that. So it's up to us to check with the managers after the game and say, hey, does this look right to you? And occasionally, I say occasionally, most of the time, there will be a player, especially a guy, if he hasn't made it to the majors yet, who will always complain that his error was a hit, or that he should have had a stolen base, that there's always something that they're going to complain about. And I think to an extent, I don't blame them, because if the goal is to make it all the way there. And that's another aspect of trying to calm down some situations, because there were plenty of times where players would get very upset with us, even though we personally didn't have anything to do with the official scoring of the game. But again, they'd come right to us and complain about it. But if the scorer won't change his opinion, they get really mad at us. They don't play baseball? How do they know what they're doing? And you just kind of have to try to be as nice as possible and say, let me talk to them. But yeah, more often than not, there's always going to be a player that thinks that his hit was a real hit and not an error, and there's always something that they believe they did better.
That's great. Other questions? I'm not seeing too many questions.
Another quick one, just because, I think this is important to a lot of our students. Graduation is coming up and everything, and it's COVID time still, right? So what would your advice be to, those who are coming up on graduation, looking for jobs right now? Because this is just, not normal times. So what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest piece of advice would probably be to keep an open mind when it comes to the job field, because especially now that there were tons of layoffs everywhere, the job that you might have been able to get before, there's probably going to be thousands of people that are way overqualified that might take that job from you. Not to say don't give up on your dreams. I don't want to say that at all. But if you're struggling to find that dream job, see if you can make a list of what other jobs you'd be willing to do. If it's an industry where there are multiple layers, where you can be like, oh, that's similar to what I did, and it'll still be just as fun. Like for me, it was working in sports was more important than what I was exactly doing. So doing media relations, where I'm not I'm not going to be the voice. I'm not going to be broadcasting, but I'm still going to be a part of the action. I'm still going to be really involved. And every day I still get to go to a baseball stadium for my job. That is more redeeming to me than sitting and trying to wait for my dream broadcasting job. Because also you never know where it's going to take you. If there's an industry you want to work in, take a job where it might eventually lead you to that dream job. And that's something similar to what I'm going to try to do. If a nice broadcasting job opens up, now I'm going to have a better opportunity to get that job, since I'll have been working in professional sports longer than just being a college graduate. But I'd say just keep an open mind, just because there are going to be plenty of people. There's always going to be plenty of people, but especially now with all the layoffs, that it might be a little bit harder to find that specific dream job, but you might be able to find kind of dream job 2, and eventually it might lead to your dream job.
That's great advice. And actually it answers one of the questions I sort of was going to leave with, which is, what are your sort of plans going forward? So it sounds like if an opportunity were to arise, you would do broadcasting, or I guess you would also be interested in a major league team as well within PR. Is that accurate?
Yeah, a lot of it's just going to depend on the situation, because with minor league baseball and sports in general, there are different cities that are going to be more fun and better to work in than others. So let's say if a position opens up in Biloxi, Mississippi, I think I'd probably stay in San Antonio than go live in Biloxi, Mississippi. If it's comparing the same position to same position. But yeah, I'd be, at this point, I have started to enjoy media relations a lot, obviously, because I wanted this position and I ended up getting this position, and I didn't do that because I thought it'd be an okay thing to do. I really enjoyed it when I interned, and definitely applied for other media relations stuff, and eventually went back here to the missions. But I'd say the plan moving forward is I'm really just gonna see what happens. As much moving as I've done the last few years, it'd be really nice to stay put for a couple of years if I can in San Antonio. Some people, it's funny, they're like, oh, moving so much, that must be so much fun. I'm like, it's not great, because it's a lot of packing and moving, buying more stuff, selling more stuff. That's the more stressful part, is moving to all sorts of different places. So it'd be nice to stay put for a little while. And then staying put would be nice too, because you have to build a more credible resume. So if I can be the public relations director for 2 or 3 years, if there's another position that opens up at a higher minor league level or a major league level, or just a better organization, whatever the case may be, it'll look better if I have 2 or 3 years under my belt than if I did 1 year here, 1 year there, 1 year here, went back to broadcasting. It'll look better if you have some stability than if you're just constantly switching back and forth and switching locations all the time.
That's great. So again, thank you, so much for your time today and answering students' questions, faculty questions. Hopefully you will be in the PR director role for 3 years, and maybe next year you'll be looking for an intern, and keep us in mind as a good pipeline, and I hopefully will be able to send you some students your way.
Of course, go Dogs. Of course.
For sure. Once a Saluki, always a Saluki, right? Yeah. So again, Jeremy, thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll stay in touch. Take care, and yeah, good luck to the start of your position.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you, and good luck to all you guys as well. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.